But I don't, well, not half, about a quarter. I don't know if they took out the rent quote. I feel like there's more they could take. And they're like, well, have the plumber let us know if they need more. I'm like, well, how about if you just expose all the pipe? Because I think we're gonna need to see.
Seats, we should probably get started.
See what the plumber says.
One more minute.
Okay.
Let people to log on.
Okay. Just okay, it was better than we expected.
Tanya,
Close.
I don't know if you got the sign-in sheet yet.
It's
Oh.
here.
Good thing you brought a low. Some people are rude,
They're gonna place all.
you know, especially when you got rude people. The roof is good. Oh, I'm impressed. You're really.
All right.
I think I've got one too, in case you ever need those.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, Brian, you just quietly snuck right in there.
Split out my 15.
It's 6 o'clock. And I'd like to call the Joint Service and Utilities and Building and Housing Committee meeting to order. With us this evening, we have Mayor Michael Dillon Brennan, Law Director Brad Bryan. We have Councilman Brian King, Councilman John Rock, Councilman Chris Cooney, Councilwoman and Vice Chair of this committee, or co-chair, I should say, Win Weiser. We have Markel Davis and Bill Bartley. Sorry, got that little this. And we have Service Director, thank you, Ellen Pennington. We also have a member of the Sustainability Committee, Jeffrey Pearl, in the audience, and some people online. Okay, so we're continuing and hopefully completing our discussion about ordinance 2024-65, amending codified ordinances, chapter 1072, entitled Trees, Hedges, and Shrubbery. We left off, thank you to Roberta Rubin, our clerk, assistant clerk here, the committee minutes. Thank you. We left off at, let's see, 1072.09. So now we're at 1072.10, discussing hedges and shrubbery along the sidewalks and driveways. One of the things I'd like to start the conversation with is it's good that height was discussed, 30 inches. We can talk about how that came to being and if that makes sense still. But if the purpose is regarding the obstruction of the line of vision, it's not always dictated by the height. Obstruction may be also due to the distance of the growing and or full-grown hedge or shrub to the sidewalk and or street. So I noticed this now all the time, how many times the hedge comes all the way to the sidewalk and there are kids, there are bikes, there are strollers, whatever, cars just pulling out of the driveway. So I'd like to hear from the committees if we want to consider a distance marker or anything about these measurements. No? Okay.
Actually, you do bring up a good point. The closer to the sidewalk that the obstruction is, the bush, it does cause an issue. Even with hedges, and we get to hedges really, well, in here. There's one on the corner of Brockway and Cedar, where unless you creep forward enough, you cannot tell if there's a car coming, especially if it's just a regular car, because the shrub is large, it's high, and it covers that corner, so it is hard to see. We've had one accident there. I don't think that was the cause of it because it could have factored into the crash because the guy pulling out onto Cedar would not have seen a car coming at 80 miles an hour down Cedar at him. But that is a point, and I think it is something that, I don't know, do we have anything previously? I don't know, Bill, do you have any thunks on that?
So the line of sight is, with a fence on a corner lot or a hedge or something like that, and 30 inches is the height. When it comes to fences, it says that the ordinance says that it can't be closer to the sidewalk. But it also puts in there, an evaluation from the building commissioner about if it's safer. That's in addition to the 30 inches.
And I know for signs, it talks about like sight triangles, but that's, a specific fixed kind of thing. And I don't know exactly how that works, and I don't know if that could be applicable to a hedge, but that's.
Sure. No,
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
In regards to the site triangle you're talking about, that's from the Ohio Location Design Manual. It's set up for site distance both for the vehicle on the main street as well as the vehicle on the side street. It is set based upon the speed limit of the approaching traffic and then the distance of the vehicle off the edge of the traveled way. And they typically look at a bumper of a vehicle being 10 feet off the edge of the traveled way, driver being about 17 feet off the edge of the traveled way. Then they look at a line of sight for that driver at a lower than 30-inch height to allow the driver to see approaching vehicle at a certain distance, depending upon the speed of the approaching traffic, the speed limit.
So what is the bottom? What are you saying the code is or whatever
And it's
the best practice or whatever it's called?
best practice on that is to keep the hedges no more than 30 inches high within a certain distance of the corner of the intersection. Typically behind the sidewalk greatly assists with that, particularly if there's a larger tree line. Again, you're looking at a driver on the side street being 17 feet off the edge of the traveled way. And you gotta look at that 17 feet to see how far down the street they can see the approaching vehicle.
How far does?
Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question. What is the assumption for the width of a tree lawn? Because there's an assumption built in, I would imagine. And I don't think necessarily all tree lawns are created equal.
Right, this site triangle doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the distance of the tree lawn. In many cases, it could be behind the sidewalk that 17 feet is, if you have a smaller tree lawn, 4-foot, 5-foot tree lawn. Most tree lawns are assumed to be a 5-foot tree lawn with a 5-foot sidewalk. So
Okay.
you got to look at that as kind of the assumption, although there are areas where you have wider tree lawns. And of
I
course that
I
factors in.
think what Mrs. Sachs brought up and what I was referencing is where you have a bush that is, or a bushes, hedges, that actually run right along the side of the sidewalk. And then might block that corner. And if the assumed distance from the sidewalk and the tree lawn don't exist, then the sight lines that are determined by the code actually would not be appropriate if that tree lawn is shorter, because it's assuming a larger distance there.
Right, and what you got to look at is then those shrubs or bushes behind should be 30 inches or less in height,
Should be what?
less than the 30 inches in height, so that driver can see.
Yeah, we could do it by height or also do it, I would assume we can do it spacing it away from the edge of the sidewalk by a foot or so. Because that would buy the extra room. Bill's waving.
So as far as distances, it's been my experience that from the corner of that intersection, other cities have distances indicated at 30 feet. So anything within even a driveway within 30 feet of that corner. In addition, then in regards to the height of the hedges, so hedges are technically a fence. So if a hedge along the street is over 6 feet, it's in violation of the fence ordinance.
Yeah, but that's 72 inches.
Yeah, so and then, but then when you get to the corner within 30 feet, it's gotta go down to the 4 feet and then specifically in the corner, in that
But even
triangle, it's
4
gotta go
feet-
down to 30 inches.
But
Yeah.
even 4 feet is 48 inches, so it still has to be lower. It's actually lower than 3 feet.
Right, it's 2.5 feet. So you got, so anything within 30 feet of that corner must be 30 inches. Any hedge.
Okay,
And
but then we're also
beyond that,
talking
you got fences. So
driveways.
that's my
and
experience.
I'll let you jump on that one.
No, I mean, I'm just thinking so many hedges are above 30 inches. They
Yeah.
are beautiful, but dangerous. I don't know. I would ask the chief of police. I didn't think of this, if there have been any incidences that, you know, that we could correlate to this. But so how do we go about and remedy this? You know, going through the city, that's a lot, and that's a lot of cutting.
It is.
Is
I mean,
there?
I don't think an ordinance is enacted where this is, where that would be, we would have to pursue it that way. But that's
You know-
what, like I said, right now, all I see is that the fence or hedge can't, it can't be as high it is away from the sidewalk. And it's up to the commissioner to determine if it's hazardous or not.
Right. So fence, I think most, unless they're wooden or those way, they're see-through, they're chain link or something like that. It's not the same as a hedge.
Correct.
I get it. That is helpful to me to think of it that
Yeah.
way, but it's not exactly apples and apples. And, if they were 2.5 feet, yes, then the car can see, for the most part, except for, get on a tricycle, but
Sure.
it can't have every eventuality. So it's a balance between the greenery and the hazard, say, public safety.
Right. The ordinance does mention that the fence or whatever needs to be 25% open visibility.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, a hedge is not
Yeah,
by
it's not. It doesn't
definition,
meet that, right.
it's, people want it to be full and robust and, green. Yes, Mr. Cooney.
I was just wondering where the 30 inches, how that number was determined. Does anybody,
That's the number that's looked at through the Ohio Location and Design Manual. Having a driver in a car at 30 inches, they can see out their driver's door.
it's recommended?
Yes,
Because I look-
yes, that's the guideline they use.
For Beechwood as an example, they have 24 inches. Cleveland Heights has 36. And other cities don't have any. So I was just wondering about 30 inches, like where that came from.
That's what
Um,
it's based on.
Yeah.
Now, driveways are a different animal compared to intersections.
Right.
With driveways, they don't look at the driver pulling out of the driveway being able to see. They look at that front bumper of the vehicle and the person coming down the street being able to stop in an adequate amount of time.
Right.
That's where they look at that bumper being 10 feet off the edge of pavement. And they look at that as the analysis for stopping sight distance for those vehicles and for the residential driveways.
Right. So if this were to move forward, if somebody they've had, hedges, there's a house at the corner of Bushnell and Miramar, and those are well above 30 inches. And they've been there as long as I've been here, that's 20 years. So we talking about a new installation of hedges as opposed to existing?
Oh, I see. So
Yeah.
here's the thing. That sounds like it's the standard. But we live in a city that has densely populated, close housing stock. It's a little bit tighter than maybe those types of properties, which can allow that kind of visibility and space and that sort of thing. So I kind of put it for us to think about. I don't know. That's something to discuss. Is it current or is it new? Because current things that are already there are grown. That's the
They're mature, yeah.
problem, if you will.
Yeah.
They're mature. It's not a problem from a ecosystem. It's a potential problem for safety. But, I'm just talking about if there's a way, as a person comes closer down to their the sidewalk from their driveway to be able to just see. A lot of people use their Mobileye, and it depends on the car to what extent, in the old days, you just look around and you'd arch your back and you'd see, but I don't know. I can't speak to
I,
population that does that.
yeah, I would say that we had a similar discussion in regards to the trees for the installation, and we were to have that requirement for all existing trees as opposed to if someone were to plant a new tree. This seems to be a similar discussion for that. Again, another house on Miramar, they have arborvitae that's about 3-4 feet tall, probably above grade. They're approximately 1 foot or so apart, but it's near the sidewalk. Yet it's nowhere near a driveway or a corner.
That's right. That's
So,
different. It would have to be a
And
distance from.
I guess what my concern is, I understand if we're trying to standardize certain things. I can appreciate that. I think as we move forward, if we're looking at, we need to keep in mind as to, if this were to go through, if it were to pass, in whatever form, that it's basically it's applicable, like new installation of hedges as an example, as we discussed.
Thank you. Ms. Isaac.
Ms. Davison and Bill, Clark and Bill, I think you guys can answer this. I think we have 30 inches already in the code. Am I wrong?
I've seen.
I think 30 inches is there. I'm pretty sure. Okay. How often do we cite people for 30-inch violations? I'm just curious, that's all.
I can't say that I've seen a citation.
Okay, so it's in the code. So I would assume that if somebody backed out and it was over 30 inches and hit a kid, suddenly we might want to cite because that would become problematic. But there's sometimes we can run into trouble, and Mr. Brian, care to opine on that one?
Ms. Weiser, excuse me,
Yeah.
30 inches is not referenced in the code
It
currently.
isn't not right now. Ooh, I check under, this is 1072. It might show up
Yeah.
at 1084.
Okay, thank you.
Because in weeds, I think it's, I think it's 30 inches as well. There's a 30 inches is in the code somewhere. It might not be in 1072.
Opinion, it's better to have a standard in there that can be
Than that.
enforced if there's a danger,
So
to
leave it
not
in there.
have
You're,
Something with
Yes,
8-foot hedges, it's a dangerous situation and not being able to do it.
okay. So basically what we're doing now would be to not necessarily worry about it. Why it's not in, I thought I
So
saw it in
you
1084.
are correct. So it looks like we're taking
Yeah.
1072-18, removing that and moving it at 1072-10.
I think,
Is that correct?
I think it stays in, the revised
Well,
natural landscapes and weeds control again.
well,
There's a 30 inch in there, I think.
yeah, I'm agreeing with you.
Oh, okay.
1072-18 refers to the 30 inches in height. And based on the copies we have here, it looks like as if 1072-18 is being removed and it's just being added to, merged into 1072-10.
Okay.
Right.
So it is that 30. I thought I had seen it.
Yeah.
So basically, the way it is, then it's sort of discretionary in terms of when it would be cited, which I think addresses your concern, Mr. Cooney. But I do think we do have some. I recognize that we can get so picky that we're turning the city into what a lot of people complain we already are, which is an HOA. And people live in cities to maybe not live in HOAs. And I think good discretion resolves a lot of things if we remember to apply those things.
Yeah, it's essentially the same section we have now, except some of the wording's improved, but it's basically.
Okay. All right.
So the sense I have is just to leave it at the 30 inches in height and maybe look at the see-through. What did you say?
With 25% opacity or visibility too.
I mean, what,
Well, we always have the ability to, and I'm sure there are individuals who would be happy to call housing and or building and complain that, my child almost was hit by somebody backing out of a drive because the hedge is too high. And I'm sure housing and building would both be very responsive to that complaint.
okay, we can move on. Any other comments about this? 1072.11, regarding the contractor cutting trees. What I see,
Tree services,
tree services. Okay.
contractor license and registration.
Okay, thanks. So basic question, does cutting down trees require a contractor or can residents cut down their own trees?
They can. They can.
Anybody? I'm asking.
It's on their property.
It's on the parts, it's whatever.
I mean, yeah, if they hire a contractor to work on their property and obtain a permit for it to perform the work per our ordinances or any approval they would receive, a contractor must be insured, bonded, and be registered.
Okay. So I was asking a different question, like that is fine and good and it makes perfect sense. But is there any, it has nothing to do with the person who wants to cut down their own tree.
So
George
someone can Get a
Washington.
homeowner permit.
Homeowner permit.
Yeah, I'm sorry. The contractor registration would be if they hired a contractor. They can receive a homeowner permit in the state of Ohio to do any work.
Remember, if I'm correct, and if memory serves me correct, we have not required permits for people to take down trees on their
I
property.
don't think so.
I've never seen a permit. I mean,
Right.
Yeah, I know.
And just because legally they can, doesn't mean we have to make them. do it.
We're suddenly
Yeah.
doing it with this particular piece of legislation. That's new.
This is about contractors,
Right, right. This is about contractors.
tree
I
service
know.
contractors
I
license.
know
registration.
that, Mayor, but here's what I'm saying. We also talked about homeowners. Can they take down trees? If they hire a contractor, then the tree service, the person has to be contracted.
Mhm.
Previous to this, they didn't even have to worry about that because they didn't have to get a permit. So if they needed a tree taken down, they would call somebody, that company would come out and take the tree down, and the city wasn't involved with the tree removal because it was on their private property and it was their tree.
Did they still have to be licensed as a contractor, Bill, even if you didn't have to get a permit or?
No, if the homeowner wants to do it, no, the licensing is only if there's a permit that's required. If someone were to come in and say, hey, can I do that? I'm gonna try to make sure they get it. If they want to take down a big tree, I'm gonna make them realize, what they're getting into. And,
Well, that would. Right.
It's similar with the
require
electrical permits here, same thing,
equipment.
Oh,
yeah.
Bill, I know, I'll get my friends and we'll come over and just take it down. We got some chainsaws. Some people are perfectly competent to do
Sure.
that.
Sure.
Want to say something? Mr. King, you look like you might want to say, okay, great. You just shocked.
Brian doesn't want them taking them down next
No,
door to him.
No, but. it just- Okay, and I don't think that yes,
I will say on this item here, if you really look at things, what it's trying to do is get the tree contractors to be registered.
I understand.
That way, there's some protection for the residents saying, are you a registered contractor? When they contract with them. And this doesn't specifically state anything about a permit for said tree where they're going to trim or do whatever. This is specifically about having those contractors be licensed.
Right, and you're making sure they have insurance, they have workers' comp insurance for their employees.
Ms. Sacks,
Go ahead.
Cooney.
thank you.
Mr. Cooney.
So you made a comment that hedges and shrubs are considered fencing.
Yeah.
In 142202, there's a requirement for registration for a fence erector.
For
A
what?
fence erector.
Fence erector?
Yeah, so if we consider hedges and shrubbery to be fences, the fence erector, the person that's doing it needs to register with the city.
That's what the law says, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Um,
Not
I'm,
perfect.
I'm just curious. I know we maintain a listing of contractors and we primarily are focused with bonds and that and insurance. Do we determine if they are qualified? How do we determine their qualifications?
So above and beyond just verifying all the documents, I mean, there's really nothing that we can do.
Because
I
I'm
mean-
curious, because, and I know, I always ask lots of questions. I'm
Yes.
sorry. I'm reading this as I'm sitting here and it's, the building commissioner is satisfied with the contractor's knowledge and ability to cut, prune, trim, remove trees, and that their knowledge and experience indicate the contractor is capable of removing trees without endangering persons or property as demonstrated by the ISA, blah, blah, blah. If we are not requiring things like this about people who we are saying we're granting a license to work in the city of University Heights, why are we being so detailed about trees? I'm not saying it isn't a bad thing. I'm just pointing out, we are holding people, a contractor who comes in and cuts trees and does it for a living to a higher standard, and we're demanding that somehow, because you're the one that's issuing the contractor's license and issuing the registration, that you would actually be able to satisfy this section, Bill.
Me
And
personally-
I don't know if you guys can. I'm being very honest.
Well, I mean, qualifications based on what these boards are printed and publicized, I mean, if we had to do that, it would certainly be cumbersome. And the things that I would use to determine a competency of a contractor, other than just discussing with them when they're applying, is the permit process itself. I mean, we register a contractor and we have to assume that they're competent. I mean, once the work starts coming in, then it's easy to identify if they don't know what they're talking about. And that's where denials for permits and things like that come in.
So, I'm sorry.
F4 says, they have to be an accredited arborist.
ISA certified, ANSI standards. I mean, could there be a checklist? When you come, you bring these things and we can see that and that it's not expired or it's in this, I don't know if it's a state or, who issues this. But whatever those standards are, I think a checklist could be easy enough. And if they're accredited, like they can just,
And I think what Lynn's asking is, should we take
Yeah.
the second sentence of subsection B out,
oh,
right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
'Cause that's kind of,
Why do they have to
hard
be a
for-
certified arborist?
Well, that would be so that they could, ultimately, when you're approving a permit or a plan, you want to have, if they're putting different species in, things like that. I mean,
I have maybe an answer for that. We got a permit, we put up a deck. And there were trees, limbs hanging over and we wanted to cut back those. So I called a tree company that was advertising to come out. And two people came out, the owner of the company and with his arborist. And he said, I said, okay, just can you cut those limbs? Just so we like the trees, but just so it doesn't hang over our deck.
Okay.
And he said, and the arborist had a laser pointer and he says, oh, do you want us to cut these two dead trees? I said, what are you talking about? And he followed up and I couldn't see that that's where the source was.
Okay.
And so without the arborist, perhaps I would have cut those limbs, but there would have been dead trees.
I was just
That's an
asking the
interesting
question,
point.
that's all.
Mhm.
Okay.
Doesn't hurt.
So I guess the question is, does it make sense to take that second sentence of subsection B out?
The
The
second
license may
sentence,
be revoked.
No,
Yeah.
no,
Where?
a contractor who has demonstrated the contractor's fitness and ability is equipped with the proper tools and
Oh, I see.
equipment to perform and furnishes references, must be issued a license.
So it's just that they,
You can still revoke it, that last sentence if they,
right, because above it, it says, that they're certified, and, in one, it says what the competency is. So.
and they're gonna have to have some sort of arborist certification.
Mhm. It could be redundant, I'm not sure. But what is the,
So,
guys think?
so essentially, because there could be some safety concerns, we'd want an accredited arborist. Because the contractor would be performing services in the city. And by having this accreditation, that'll be one way for them to show competency.
Right.
Right.
It's more objective than subjective.
so all they have to do is they don't have to be certified. They have to have somebody on staff who is certified.
Mr. Meliscus, you can come to the podium.
I was just trying to confirm what Mr. Cooney said, that, the way that you demonstrate competence is by having any one of the certifications that are called out in there. I mean, if you've seen tree services driving around, most of them have an ANSI stamp on their truck, because that's how they do their business. They want you to know that. So I was just trying to indicate
Yeah.
that I agree with that. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so do we think that a sentence is redundant or extraneous? A contractor who has demonstrated the contractor's fitness and ability is equipped with proper tools and equipment to perform the tree work and furnishes references to the satisfaction of the building commissioner. Or do you want to paraphrase it in some way? Anybody?
Well, I would go with
Defer
whatever
to the-
Mr. Bryan would recommend.
Yeah.
I wasn't fussing about, I was asking some legitimate questions, that's all. It just seemed to be.
And I guess I
Owner.
would just get a little more confirmation from Mr. Bartley. Is that something you wouldn't be comfortable doing when a contractor is registering, looking into those extra things, asking them for references, asking them what tools they have?
No, we can adjust the permit, the application to ask those questions.
But I mean-
Oh, we do?
Doc-
Okay.
Um, and that enables them to say, this is the kind of species of tree I want to put, or I want to tear this tree down instead of cut limbs. Once that comes in and comes to us, then we need someone certified on the other end to say, yeah, this person's right. If you follow
Okay.
what I'm trying to say. So an arborist or somebody with that kind of knowledge as well.
So, yeah, my question is, I guess, is that something you guys would want to do as far as that additional work and follow-up, or are we comfortable that if they're licensed as an ISA certified arborist, that the professional licensing board is kind of taking care of that for us? It's just a question.
Yeah, we can handle that. We can collect those documents.
Okay.
Okay,
Good.
good. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Okay. Moving along. Okay, is there anything else in this list? It's an extensive list to make sure that the contractor is competent and safe. Okay. Nothing else in 1072.11? Okay, moving along. Actually, one second. So I had a question about H for a second. Any person, entity, firm, association, corporation that cuts, prunes, trims, trees, or removes trees in a manner that blocks off a public street must notify the building commissioner at least one business day in advance of the work or as soon as practical when an emergency exists. Does this mean, like, what's an example of that? Like, if a tree gets hit by lightning or something and falls into the car, yes.
Well, that would be, if there's an emergency, if a tree were to
Emergency.
fall, that sort of thing. However, the rest of that part there, they'd be taking down a tree in the front yard. They may need a crane on the street. And we've had that where they've contacted me
Ah.
to where they have needed to block the street, close the street at a single point location in order to remove the tree. That's something that, we want them to at least give a day's notice so we can let police,
You work
fire
with the
know.
police to block. it.
Correct.
Okay, and
Correct.
reroute, detour and that sort
Mm-hmm.
of thing. And
Is that enough notice, Mr. Pennington, you think, or?
One day is usually adequate. We've had them call the morning of and block a street. And then I go out there, hey, what's going on? Well, we're taking down this tree. So having at least a day's notice, allowing then an email to go to police and fire is enough time for us to get that notification out there.
That's wonderful that we notify the city and the residents on the street don't get notified as well. Because they're the ones that have to drive up and down the street. And we've had some instances, I know when they were doing some work, where they blocked the road and people were trying to get out to go to work and had to call in late. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's wonderful. And it's important that we notify the city. If they're giving a notice, is there a way they can at least alert the section of the street that's gonna be blocked? Cause they can work up to there for a couple of hours till they get everything cleared out.
Well, I think that's something that ultimately, if they provide the notice, we can ask them to notify the residents of that section of the street. So maybe we do want to change it from 1 day notice to 2 days notice, then let them notify the resident,
If they
ask them to
know.
notify the residents of the street.
one day is.
Right now, every contractor in the world that does landscaping seems to think they own the streets and everybody else has just gotta work their way around them. And sometimes with interesting challenges, especially when they have the big trailers. And they're parked on the opposite side of the street from where parking is allowed, and then you're playing, dodge them? And I think people get a little ticked off when that happens, where the street gets blocked and they get absolutely no notification. At least the water department, amazingly, the water department tells us.
So is that through signs? You know, how do you envision this? How do you envision the neighbors being notified with a day's notice? How would that work? Like you said, the water department, I'm trying to understand.
Oh, they just
because-
send their guys around in the area and
Knock on the-
they either have a tag, they rap on the door and say, hey, the street will be shut down for a couple hours. So you have a chance to move your car in case you need to get out. Right now, there's nothing that would motivate them to do it because they're coming to cut a tree on one property and they're not thinking about anybody who needs to go anywhere.
I would agree. And right now, the contractors are not registered, so we have no
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
enforcement ways to
Yeah,
make them comply with giving notification. So with having this set in place with the registration, we have a little more teeth where we can say, hey, you must notify the residents within that 1 block range to the fact that you're going to be doing work on.
do we need to
Tuesday.
put it in the ordinance or just make sure that building does notify them or whoever gets notified? Because we're asking you guys to, if they come to you and say they gotta notify you, they're notifying you, Bill, one
Right.
day before. That means you also have to say, a couple hours before, be sure you knock on the doors and let them know the street's gonna be blocked.
So what I'm thinking is, it can be a condition of their permit. That and I don't know, 2 days, I think 3 days. something like that, that they must
Like-
notify the neighborhoods within so many houses. Of that residence, with a sign or something like that.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't, that's what I'm thinking. I'm not sure that.
it's not the whole, they don't have to notify the entire city. I mean, it's the immediate area, just so people can get out of there.
Yeah.
If it is in an area of the city where the street ends, it's usually gonna affect a street end more than anything else.
And we
So
could
the
add
lady who
something
lives on a
that,
street end.
Yeah, tell me about it. We've had joy, even with city crews.
we could add something that says, and the contractor is required to use best efforts to notify the immediate neighbors affected by the
Mm.
closures.
Bill's saying he could,
Put it on the.
can that be done just internally with the permit, or do we need to put it in the ordinance for you to put it in the permit?
It can be done. It really doesn't have any teeth if.
Does it need to be in
It's
the
in the
ordinance?
application, if you think that's gonna be sufficient to just get it done. I mean, I guess.
I think it
permit could
protects
be
the
re-
residents, and it's confined. Hopefully, it's not a huge, I mean,
I don't
there
think
could be a tornado or something and it goes through the city
Well,
and you're affected.
Yeah,
But,
we're
you know,
gonna
all over the place.
people
Thank God
think
we
it's-
typically don't have that. So it could be, I think that
What?
would be good in the ordinance, just to notify residents. I don't think that puts a burden on the residents. Okay, that's why I think it's okay. It's not prescriptive.
It has more teeth, like,
Yeah.
if it's in the ordinance, that.
Okay.
So would we be saying that the building commissioner may require that
Okay.
notification? We're leaving it to the building commissioner to do that on a case by case basis.
Might be nice to do it for the residents.
Okay.
Okay.
Any more discussion on that? Okay, thank you. And moving along, 1072.12 pesticides used on public property. Okay, I'm just gonna open it up for discussion. People have comment. This is on public properties. This is the tree lawn and also our other public spaces.
To be honest, I think we talked about this previously,
feel-
because pesticides they show up earlier too,
Mhm.
don't they?
I don't know. I
There's
thought-
some,
maybe
there's
thought
some,
about it.
boy, we've been through this ordinance so many times. I didn't have any problem.
Yes. Okay. 1072.13 hazardous trees, hedges, shrubbery, or other vegetation on private property. Okay, so my first question is so the building commissioner is the one to determine what's hazardous on private property. Like, how would they know if they're not coming on private property?
Markel, isn't housing the one that's actually going out, or is the service director going out?
I think the definition includes.
The service and housing? Because I think right now, and correct me if I'm wrong, Markel, doesn't the inspector go and look at it and maybe get the service director involved to determine if it's dead or hazardous?
So. A recent incident. The resident or several residents stated that the tree was actually dead. So I called to schedule who we have used in the past. And they're coming out to give an estimate and determine if the tree is actually dead.
So you contacted an arborist for it?
The tree removal company.
Oh, you
The
went right,
company actually has an arborist on staff.
but somebody, who put eyes on the tree to determine if it was dead?
I believe
Yes.
the housing inspector
Yeah.
looked at it
Oh,
and
okay,
felt
so
the tree was dead.
Silas looked at it and said, yeah, this thing looks, usually you can tell when they're pretty dead, yeah. And then you took care of hooking up who we needed to have come do it since the resident wasn't doing it.
Yes, and in a case where there's maybe a question about the health of a particular tree, that's where they may contact me I may get the arborist to take a look at the tree and get his opinion as to whether the tree should or should not come
Okay.
down. So
Great.
So this doesn't just apply to trees. This part applies to hedges, shrubbery, or other vegetation. So I'm wondering, like, what's considered hazardous? Is it rampant high weeds? Is it like what was the thought behind this? That it's not just restricted to dead trees?
Yeah, the definition is tied to 107202G.
Into
Which,
O2G. Okay, let me get to that. G, hazard, uh-huh.
It has that list of 10
Infectious
things:
disease,
infectious
yes.
disease, risk to other trees, tree is dead or dying, obstructs the view of traffic control device or signal or the free passage of pedestrian or vehicular traffic on any public property, public sidewalk, or public street. 4, interferes or has the potential to interfere with any public property. 5, has a tree defect that may cause the tree or limb thereof to fail. 6, threatens the public health, safety, and welfare. 7, is any poplar, basswood, box elder, or willow tree on any private property in proximity to any public property, allowing the roots of the tree to penetrate through or under the surface of any public place. 8, is a tree stump within the front setback area of the property that extends above lot grade level. 9, violates section 1072.10.
that deals
Uh-huh.
with the height.
Which is what we talked about at the
Yes.
beginning.
Right.
Okay,
And 10 is a tree having less than 10 feet of clearance above a driveway or public side.
what is above a driveway?
Why a tree stump? Why a tree stump? I'm just hit me because
Yeah.
you drive along and you see tree stumps and people put stuff on them and they decorate them.
Costs a lot more to have that stump ground, like
Well,
it's
yeah, I know
significantly
that.
more.
I know.
So what's the hazard with that?
Just keep growing.
Even
What?
even if it's cut?
It's just a stump.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the roots will still continue to grow.
They can.
Oh.
So if you have a sewer line,
Uh-huh.
as an example.
I understand.
Yeah.
I didn't realize. Okay, or it could already be there. It could already be
there
interfering
would
with
be some
utilities.
unhappy people where they've decorated their tree stumps.
Thank you
It
for
could
reminding
just
me.
simply be a trip hazard if,
And
you know.
the tree stump is only within the front setback area of the property.
Extends above
It
the line.
extends above lot, so
It's a.
it has to be the
So in
front.
other words, if you have a tree stump in your front yard, we won't let you have it, but if you have a tree stump in your backyard, it's okay?
Yes. That's what it's.
You'll be,
Why? What's the problem with the tree stump in the front yard? I mean, granted, you might say, oh, they're growing but that's on their property. They had a tree there that was growing into their sewer, and that was on their property. We can't tell them to take it down because it's growing into their sewer. As long as it's on their.
It's also causing an issue with the sidewalks.
louder?
as well. I'm
Well,
sorry.
I can hear you with the sidewalk. There, that gets covered under sidewalks. Because there's a whole thing in the code for that. But I'm talking about a tree stump that's in the front setback, that can be closer to the house. That's like, that can be nowhere near the. I mean, I could see it. Are we talking cosmetics? I maybe I should leave.
Stumping for stumps.
I keep asking these questions.
No, that's.
No, it
Tree-
just
This is the
seems
point.
counterintuitive.
Tree
Who would
stumps
think the tree
may foster pests, may foster critters, may bring in fungus. They can be a trip hazard, they can be unsightly, but it's more than just unsightliness. It's about the things that can burrow in and make a home out of a tree stump.
Well, I would point out to you, Mayor, we got things that burrow and live under garages, decks, near foundations.
Yeah, well, we need our foundations in our garages. We don't need the tree stumps.
Well, that's your opinion, and I certainly can respect it. But people who have tree stumps they've decorated probably don't agree with your opinion. I'm not trying to be facetious
Well,
here.
I suppose they could take it to the BZA.
Yeah.
It demonstrate why their tree stump is exceptional and adds value as opposed to light.
Mr. Cooney.
Thank you.
That would be fun.
The way I read this is that a tree stump within the front setback area of the property that extends above the lot grade level. We're looking at, I was thinking of the sidewalks as well. It could cause it eventually, there's, some heaving going on, which I've seen that, in front of my house. That happened to me.
What happened? I'm sorry.
The roots, there was a tree that essentially the roots grew through and the sidewalk began to separate. And I got a violation. So they had to take the sidewalks up, lift it, cut the tree roots. I had the tree in my front yard just removed last fall. I can't remember, was it spring? I think it was, or last fall, it was taken down because it was dying. My neighbors lost first base. They're not happy about that.
Mhm.
But when I see above the phrase in there, like above
Above grade.
above grade, that's what's going through my mind. And I agree that it could eventually, if the stump continues to deteriorate, it just creates a whole nother set of problems. And I understand it's private property, should they or should they not, but does it become a nuisance at that point? If it's close to the sidewalk, if it's causing, the plane of the sidewalk to not be level with the rest of the sidewalk, that person could get cited from a number of different ways to try to remedy the situation, even though if it's on there versus a tree lawn, the city then through the shade tree project would take care of it.
I'm always very careful about tree roots and sidewalks because the bulk of rise sidewalks are due to city trees on city tree lawns and not very few from private trees on private property. I think it's a valid question. And yes, things rot, but that's just as natural as some of the other stuff we're putting in here.
I
uh,
really do think it's a safety hazard. It's a trip hazard.
Well-
Above grade, like Councilman Cooney points this out. If it's in the middle of a front yard and the grass is long or it's covered with snow and somebody on your lawn, who knows, it could be solicitor, could be a mailman, and they could trip on it.
Careful.
and
I have
that's-
I
mean,
have a
it's simple as that, I
wonderful
think.
rock in my front yard.
Again, that's a
Are you
trip
gonna
hazard.
come take my rock away? I mean, I'll be happy to let you haul it out, Bill.
We're definitely, splitting hairs here.
Yeah, I
But-
know, and that's
Yeah, but,
why I think, I'm splitting hairs, but it's a valid question.
Yeah.
And it's a valid question for even above grade, especially if it's something that a homeowner has decided to turn into a small table. And if you're romping through their front yard, you're on their private property, which also makes me wonder what you're doing there, but that's okay. And yes, it could be hidden under snow, but there's a lot that's hidden under snow. I'm
I don't
just
think it's
pointing it
necessary.
out, that's all.
They could have, if there is a violation, they could appeal it.
Yes, they could.
Yeah, if there's really a problem, then I mean, I can see doing it, but I just thought it was a little carried away.
Sure.
That's all.
That's why we're here.
Okay. Any more discussion about this? Anybody want yes,
Should we reference 107202
yes, that's what I was gonna.
within that subclause?
It is in subclause A there.
Where? Looking, where is that?
I'm not seeing it. 107213 you're referring to?
Yeah.
It's the
subsection
other
A,
way.
It's
Section A?
it's the underlying language.
Oh, because it says hazard.
Yeah.
Because it's, you have to put it in quotes?
No, I mean, do you have the, Right, copy, it's,
Maybe
the
not.
language was added as defined in section 1072.
No, I don't.
All right, this was the last one we were working on.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Yeah, it wasn't in my copy, so it's there.
Yeah,
That-
that's,
Yeah,
Right.
that side of the room.
we've got about 10 copies floating at this
Okay,
point.
well, as long as you have that.
That's fine. It's
That's
there.
gonna go to you at the end anyway. So, regarding C7, inform the owner that if the owner fails to comply with the order of the building commissioner, the abatement may be done by the city or by contract. That the entire cost will be charged to the owner and that the city may take civil action against the owner to collect all costs to and prosecute the owner. So this is happening on private property?
Yes, so if the owner doesn't take care of the problem cited for dangerous condition,
Hmm.
then
Isn't that duplicative? If we're saying we're gonna certify the unpaid costs to the fiscal officer and put it on the tax duplicate for collection, we've already collected the money. So why would we take civil action again at our cost to collect the cost due?
it gives another,
just
it
curious.
gives another option because
Okay.
there are cases where the property is transferred before it makes it onto the tax duplicate and then,
So
you
it
don't want to
covers-
certify it to a new
Okay.
owner that wasn't responsible for the problem, that didn't have notice of it. So it gives the option just to sue the person in small claims court. if
Thank you,
they
Mr.
wanted to.
Bryan.
So
That makes sense.
Okay, there's a lot here. Has everybody read through it? Does anybody have any other questions about 1072.13? Okay. 1072.14 appeals. So I'm trying to understand. Appealing to what? So.
I can kind of explain,
yeah,
whenever we
please,
have
tell me.
this type of enforcement ability or these decisions, we need a avenue for people to appeal the decision and have due process. So this allows them to appeal the decision to the, whether it's the building department or housing department, to the Board of Zoning Appeals.
And that's appropriate to the BZA. Okay,
And then whatever the BZA's decision is final, and then you'd have to go to appeal it to court at that point.
any discussion or questions? Okay,
Should it,
Yeah.
should it mention the fee, Brad, or should we?
I think we have the general fee. It's gonna be the same fee as the
Yeah.
general fee under the BZA section, so I think we're good.
Okay.
okay. Okay, 1072.15 exceptions. Okay, so during a period of emergency such as tornado, ice storm, flood, or other extreme nature as declared by the mayor. Okay, so it's, well, what about also if it's declared by the county, state, federal mayor? Are there any obligations you have to declare an emergency if it's declared at another level of government?
I think if another level of government also declares an emergency, that ought to apply here. I have no difficulty with the idea of the mayor issuing a declaration of emergency to go with this. I would defer to law director if.
Yeah, I think this is a situation where we're basically
Mhm.
waiving our own rules.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know,
And I think there are other instances where we do that, where the declaration of emergency by the mayor is important for how we dispatch, who we dispatch to go out there and clear streets. For instance, typically we would want our own service department to be doing that work as much as possible, but if it's too voluminous, if the mayor declares an emergency, then the CBA requirement, for instance, that our service employees would be the exclusive group doing that, is set aside for purposes of the emergency, and we can contract with others to, because of the exigent circumstances of the emergency, to get trees cleared and, our guys do a great job, but if we have a lot of trees, we're gonna want all the help we can get.
Mhm. Okay, that's
Mhm.
good. reason.
Right, and on the flip side, we're not gonna run out and cite everyone the day after the tornado, having hanging loons
Okay.
or something.
Right,
Act of God there.
right.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Any questions?
And
or-
just to explain,
Yes.
on subsection B, I think we're missing a word or with the additional language. So when it says for tree removal, trimming and pruning by a public agency or utility company on its own property, there should be an or with
Or with that.
dedicated easements.
Okay, thank you for adding that. Okay, 1072.99 penalty, criminal penalties. So. I wrote here. So if someone doesn't follow through taking their trees down, paying the fees, doing the things earlier in this ordinance, then that's the next step. Am I understanding that correctly?
It's one option. We can just certify a fine on the tax duplicate if there's a fine, like, the over 1 acre properties, if you don't do what you're supposed to do and get permission to take down the trees and put down a plan. There's civil, we can go after somebody civilly and you can file a criminal charge for.
No. On the private property?
Well, I know you want to change, but I mean, that's what the options are. Civil penalties and criminal penalties, so you can.
I-
No, we talked about on the, where you have to do the tree plan and you're not following, planting the extra trees, and you take them down, that we only wanted to be able to find somebody and
Yeah.
certify it in the tax duplicate or
Yeah,
collect civilly, not cite somebody criminally for that.
yeah, that's totally different than a hazardous tree.
Mhm. But it's
Hazardous
in
tree
there.
is a safety issue.
I see. Does it differentiate though? Doesn't seem to differentiate. Do we need to? Think we might need to.
Well, it's giving us options based on the tailor it, based on the circumstance.
No, okay.
Please.
If
For a hazardous tree.
for hazardous trees, yes, we need that. I would wholeheartedly agree, because hazardous trees are safety issues and need to be resolved that way.
Or if a contractor doesn't register,
Yeah,
we could cite them.
that I
criminally.
fully understand. That I'm fine with, the one section where I'm not fine.
To clarify.
Contractor does work and doesn't comply with the ordinance, it's doing something outside the ordinance. We have criminal options.
Micah had his hand up.
I'm sorry.
Micah had-
Oh, Micah, please. Mr.
Or the
Miller.
prohibited activities, section 06 too.
Okay.
Yeah, if I may, I just wanted to remind people that this is the same level of penalty we have for all kinds of things that probably don't rise to jail and all that stuff, but I looked it up and there's stuff like dying your pet rabbit is also a misdemeanor in the city of University Heights, blocking a driveway. The point of this, as the law director said, is if they're really gonna ignore every fine, every summons, there has to be some way to back it up eventually, or people would just be like, I'm not doing what you say, right? And we talked about last time that the one particular point of contention being that not replacing the trees, again, that only applies to 1 acre properties, which is, I think 100%, but maybe there's 1 or 2 properties in the city that are over an acre that are not commercial property. So we're really talking about a developer or an LLC that is going to ignore our laws. That's when this penalty would come into play. This is not going to be used to have a homeowner that didn't replace a tree. Like, that just doesn't apply.
Yeah, and practically, just to show how things work. So somebody gets cited into court by Mr. Cicero and the case proceeds through the court. And whether they plead guilty or are convicted after a trial, the court's usually going to handle it by not sentencing the person right away, either if, you know, the condition's remedied, then they're going to get more of a slap on the wrist, you know, and maybe if any jail time's involved, suspended on the condition, you don't do the same thing within the next year. Or if it hasn't been done, you know, you pass it for sentencing for 30 days, 45 days for them to remedy the problem. They come back, everything's fine. It's a really low penalty. Nobody's going to jail. If they just refuse to do anything, you need to do something, have some teeth to make the person.
I'm perfectly fine with that for hazardous trees.
Right.
We have added a section under the private property that allows us to recoup the fines with a penalty. That does not take it to the level of going to court on it. That'll go on to the assessment. So the money does come back and is resolved. Nobody's going to get away without paying.
Excuse me.
Yes.
So if if a contractor, if it's primarily like we think is LLCs, larger properties, so you're gonna have corporations, I mean, that they're gonna be, they could criminally be charged if they do work without getting this permit for work with no permit. We already have an ordinance there that would carry a criminal charge.
Oh, I mean,
So I don't think,
no,
Is this
we
redundant?
already
Is that what
said
you're
the criminal.
well, yeah,
charges
there's something
could
else in
apply
the
to
ordinance that I could
contractors.
use to violate them for doing this without a permit.
Oh.
And it
Yeah.
would be criminal. If it's work, they have to
Yeah,
get a
yeah,
permit
they
for a
still
mistake.
have to get, a permit. We're not talking about that. We're talking about there were fines that were assessed, that are being assessed if they take down a tree but don't replace it on private property. And that was considered, if they didn't pay the fine, that it would be criminal. And rather than that, by requiring them, by putting it in, that we will add the cost of the fine plus whatever to the assessment, we recoup the fine. The only reason the fine exists is to pay for a tree to be planted someplace else. And it's already started going to the shade tree fund. So it meets the intent of the section, which is getting another tree planted, but not at city cost. And yet helps them think about these things. And as Councilman Rock brought up when we had the rather extensive discussions on that section, because of permitting and because they're going to if they're going to develop it, they're going to be going to zoning and planning. And that will have the sketches that show where these things go. And that gets it in there as well. So this is not something where they're just taking down trees and there is not a double check going on.
But if they initiated that work without going to planning and zoning, there's an ordinance that's work without permit then.
Yeah, they still
As
need
far
to get a
as I'm
permit.
concerned.
Yeah, they need to get a permit to take the trees down.
Right.
Even
you
before they
get this
go
in-
to zoning and planning, and they have to, I think the way there is a section in that where they have to come up with a plan for the trees.
Anybody else? Okay, wow, this is, okay. So what I'm going to ask is, the law director to please take into consideration all the corrections and amendments, whatever, to this ordinance that we've been discussing over the last few meetings. And if you would then circulate it to the joint committees for us to review, that would be very much appreciated. And then everybody will have a chance to see what that looks like, all in one setting together. I'd like to, it's 7:09. I think we can start talking about weeds. And I guess the intention is, once we get through the weeds, we can ask the law director if there are any changes to that, to give that to the joint committees together. And since these both ordinances affect all properties in University Heights, Councilwoman Weiser and I spoke about looking forward to having a public hearing on the updated ordinances, just to make sure that the city residents have the opportunity to point out something maybe we hadn't thought of. And we could all be we could be closer to at least being on the same page, so that it's not a shock or surprise to anybody, and really to understand what the objective is of these two very important pieces of legislation. Okay, so let's move forward with the weeds, which I have right here. Okay, this
And what's the ordinance number?
it is
64.
2024-64.
It's the rewrite of 1084.
If you recall, we did have the professor from John Carroll University who spoke to us at an earlier meeting. So taking that into account and going through the ordinance again, we'll start talking about it. I just had a question about the whereases. The last one, whereas the city's Citizen Advisory Committee on Sustainability recommends this ordinance as an initiative designed in part to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Just for the law director, is that wording, can that advisory committee actually recommend this ordinance? I just want to make sure it's
Oh, it's not really,
Yeah, I think I know what you're saying.
Mhm.
They're really,
yeah, is it really?
It's
really an
introduced by the
advi-
mayor,
really
you know,
Supposedly pure
group
mayor.
of-
who was advised by,
advisors to the mayor.
Yeah,
I mean, you could replace it.
well, it's being introduced by the mayor, and so, and he
You
did
could
the,
move it
with
to the
like
mayor.
anything. I mean,
On the advice of the
although
citizens.
if you look at at 220, 220 does read that all committees and advisory committees of the council and the mayor fit under the public hearing laws, which would mean open meetings, and they should be, if 220 is applied. So in that case, it could probably fit, but since it hasn't actually been operating that way, it's hard to do it.
I mean,
open committee.
If you want to change it to the mayor upon advice or recommendation, whatever you want to say, of the city's
Does
citizen.
it say for
advisory
the
committee.
trees? Does it say that? The language in the trees is the Citizens Advisory Committee on Sustainability further recommends this ordinance. So I don't know if that needs to be looked at as well. Probably the same thing on both, whatever we decide. You know. I think it's enough that it's from the mayor, and like anything else from the mayor, I don't recall seeing advised by any other committee or any other. Could be wrong, but I don't recall that, so it might be extraneous.
I think it's nice to give credit where credit is due. And here, we have some concerned citizens who recommended this ordinance. We can say, I suppose, that whereas, this ordinance is an initiative designed in part to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. I think that's certainly important. I think
Mhm.
it's also important that we generally, recognize the efforts of citizens, some of whom are here tonight, like Mr. Pearl, Mr. Meliscus, who have, who've made recommendations to me, which I took to heart and, introduced this ordinance.
So we do appreciate, and we say that at every opportunity that we can,
Mhm.
but this committee has not been, public at all, like, at all. So I defer to the law director.
Yeah, I would just say, whereas the mayor, upon the recommendation, of the city's Citizen Advisory Committee on Sustainability recommends this ordinance.
That would be fine with me.
So you use recommend twice. I mean, I understand that recommends to the mayor, but not necessarily recommends the ordinance. I think that's more of a direct line, which is reserved for the mayor and council.
Well, it also could be
And,
by an established committee
uh-huh,
from council. Or the mayor.
Commission.
An established, a committee,
In our
board or
charter.
commission.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, to some degree, the way the sustainability committee has been described has put it in a nebulous spot. Because mayor goes away, committee goes away. It's never been attached to the city. It's only attached to the mayor. And for the amount of work and good work that the sustainability committee does, it almost ends up, because of the way it's structured, because we have to operate under laws, it almost diminishes some of that, in my opinion. And it bothers me, to some degree that that's happened, but it happened. So that's all.
Yeah, and I can figure out a way not to use recommendation
thank you.
twice, and
Yeah,
everyone reviews it, if anyone.
Yeah, an
we
advice
still have
by
the
or something,
trust
like that,
stuff,
and it's an
yes.
advisory committee, and to include that, the committee in that capacity is appropriate
Okay.
and appreciated.
What about something along the lines, the mayor, upon discussions with the city's Citizens Advisory Committee on Sustainability, recommends this ordinance as an initiative. So
But it's
Well, it wouldn't be the
not
city.
the city.
It's not the city, it's
That's
the
the
mayor's
problem.
advisory.
That's the problem, Ellen.
If only it would be.
It's not the
Okay.
cities.
Even,
Because of the way it was
the mayor,
structured.
in discussion with the Citizens Advisory Committee on Sustainability, recommends this ordinance as an initiative. You could do it that way. Then you're saying the mayor recommends.
I think, Mr. Brian.
Yeah.
Can
Yeah, that's what I
wordsmith
think.
that.
Yep.
We can
that's
We'll
what I
we'll
think.
deal with
Yeah.
that at some point, I guess.
Any other comments about that? Okay. All right, so Exhibit A. Exhibit A, purpose, 108, 4.01. So this is regarding native trees, native species. We'll get into that, I guess, in definitions. Anybody have any comments about the purpose, the general purpose?
No, I
Okay,
think it's wonderful.
okay, great. 108, 4.02 definitions. Now, so I thought a lot about what Dr. Watling said in terms of defining invasive, how to define it, what the practical application would be for the building commissioner and director of housing and et cetera to actually move forward with this and and identify. We talked about apps, we talked about interns, we talked about all kinds of things. So that is something that I would like to hear some discussion. And noxious weeds and grass, I think what he said that I agreed with, and I think Mr. Meliscus talked a little bit about this, is how to work with the local vendors of these types of weeds, okay, types of plants. And I think that Mr. Meliscus, correct me if I'm wrong, you said that they already know about this and it's not the local vendors that we worry about, but it's when people bring saplings or whatever from outside the area. I don't know that people do. I don't know how we would know that, why we would assume that. Please.
Yeah, thank you. So in the definition section, right, as the guy from John Carroll noted, we don't want to be too prescriptive in the ordinance
Right.
itself. And so in this particular case, I thought we did a good job of outsourcing that to the definitions by the state, right? So we're not making the list. This is what the state has already defined as noxious weeds or plants. And so because it's a state level thing, yeah, all of these nurseries and stuff are not going to be selling plants that are already designated by the state as.
That's the
illegal.
Ohio Department of Agriculture. That's
Right.
that language.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so since it's a state level thing, then yeah, it would be illegal for them to sell it in University Heights or any of the surrounding areas or anywhere in the state. So the only people that would even risk doing such a thing would be, yeah, if you were bringing stuff in across state lines, which is, maybe that's not a risk, but I don't see where anyone would get caught up in it other than doing that, right? So we already have protections from a state level, so this is just reinforcing, want to do what the state says.
Thank you. Now, this is on residential property primarily, and I'm looking to Mr. King for a second because I remember taking a couple of walks with Mr. Shilo, Dr. Shilo, maybe he's a PT then, that's what that is, regarding the Friends of the
Are you
Walt and how
Speaking
there
of
are.
Ron Shiloh,
Yes. How there are, forgive me for mispronouncing, how there are invasive species that have encroached into the Walt. Am I remember that correctly? And you talk about the sticky and the different. So to some extent, I'm not sure how we control that, without a major effort. And it could blow, from that wide property, for example, onto people who live in Fenwick or, Faversham or wherever, Silsby, any place really, Summerfield or Westwood. So I'm not sure how, if we can't control it with a concerted effort all the time, how that works. I recall, I'll go off on one little tangent here. I think it was March 31st. I came home for the end of March and the snow had just melted and I was shocked. I took pictures at how much of our lawn was filled with what looked like an invasive species. I don't know what it was, but it just all of a sudden took over and we had to do something to remedy that. I just don't know how practical this is or how to really address this in a practical way. Ms. Weiser.
Okay, we're defining it here.
Mhm.
And we need a definition of what is an invasive species, even under the old code. So this isn't really a huge change. Some of the challenge comes in who can identify it. And that becomes problematic, and we can talk about that as we go through. But to define it, I think it's fine if we just go with the state of Ohio. It makes it a whole lot easier for everybody. At least we know what the definition is. then if we can actually identify it, we're in good shape.
Building commissioner is gonna have to deal with this.
Yeah, I would reach out to the law director and see, I don't know that this is a building and housing issue. I think it would be a health department issue. I mean, with the building and how, we don't have the criteria to identify it, as you said, and even, cite for it in a legal matter.
Well,
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
I
I don't know.
yeah, I
Bill,
don't-
Bill's point is good.
But the police aren't gonna do it because this is in the ten
Then,
eighty-four
but the
section.
problem is it's fine to say we're gonna identify the invasive species, we're gonna put it on the books. But it comes down to the human beings that have to identify that as being invasive. Do we need to send our inspectors for additional training? Do we need to give them software? Do we need, and even then, I think when, I forget his name, from John Carroll was here, he said even some of the handheld, the phone identifiers aren't that good. What is the amount of time we're gonna spend doing this? Because that's a cost to the city. And I'm not diminishing what this is trying to do, but then we already have our inspectors that are having to work through exterior building codes, safety issues that get called in, sidewalk issues, commercial issues, point of sale. How many inspectors do we need? What's going to be the overall cost? But how do we do it? That's the other piece.
Yeah, and I guess to answer the question, I mean, I understand Mr. Bartley's concern. You're not qualified to
Yeah.
identify these things. The health department's not gonna do anything.
No.
That's not something
Okay.
they're gonna want to get involved in with the county. I mean, they barely, house has to be ready to completely
Yeah.
fall apart and
Yeah.
for them even to get involved. So I guess
Mhm.
it's almost where we're attacking the most egregious cases, I know it when I see it type of thing. If it's that serious, we can deal with it. If it's, a complaint with a neighbor that it doesn't necessarily look bad, but there's some invasive species that's
Mhm.
spreading, maybe at that point, we need to get expertise involved and decide whether we want to go down that road and
I mean, we already have codified issue, prohibition on noxious weeds.
Mhm.
So it's a continuing issue. And if it's a training issue, then that is something that can be taken up. It could be that our housing inspectors will, and maybe even now ought to have additional training on what are noxious weeds. Because they do write up noxious weeds as something that are in yards that need to be addressed. And that's something that's currently noticed by our housing inspectors, so even without the new legislation. So, it's an interesting point. We don't necessarily require our housing inspectors to be botanists, and I don't know that we need to go that far in order for us to have legislation that refines what we already have regarding the prohibition of noxious weeds and, allows then, as you said, Mr. Bryan, our department and our inspectors to be able to, in particular, address, the worst cases.
And the John Carroll professor did say, this is the struggle with these times of enforcements is defining, but I think, most of us can say, there's weeds that are growing high and are noxious, spreading. It's just it's the other case where, like I said, maybe we need to call the John Carroll professor in on a case or two in a year and it's,
Councilman Weiser.
There's another piece to this. I already know that some people think that, I'm thinking of a natural butterfly type garden, that some of those contain noxious weeds, because to them, those are weeds. And if we're able to identify a noxious weed or an invasive species in one yard, and we don't catch it in other yards, and people go back and people do talk, do we end up with enforcement that isn't equal? And that becomes problematic.
And right, and then we're going, that gets you to the managed natural landscape definition.
Yeah, and it's, I understand the issues with invasive species. And, I mean, there's a lot, one of the invasive species, I forget what it is. It's like a vine, vinca vine. And
Fine.
a vinca vine. And a lot of people use it in their flower pots because it gives, it's green and it's a variegated leaf. So it looks pretty, but if it gets to the ground, it really likes to grow, and they grow by root systems. So it becomes problematic, but then, people are saying, well, it's ground cover. But is it ground cover because it's invasive? Is it defined as invasive by the state of Ohio? How does the state of Ohio define it? Is some invasive species are defined if they travel along a root system. And that can be a lot of things. It can be thistle and it can be vicavine. It's to enforce it is going to be challenging at best. Seriously, I'm being very realistic. And if we have someone, and my bet is we do have some people in the city who can identify an invasive species. And they call the housing department and say, there's an invasive species at blah, 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 blah. And we cite that homeowner appropriately because this is the code. And yet it exists in other areas where that person may not have seen it. And it becomes a talking, social media, God love it. It becomes a talked about issue. That can get interesting. And, I hate to put the building department in the middle of those crosshairs. It's going to be a challenge, and I think we need to recognize it.
Mr. Cooney?
Thank you. So the inspector would have to have access to the property unless it's visible from the street. But I do agree there's some training that would be required. Basic training. I would like to think that the state would probably offer some sort of training because you're trying to cover the state as opposed to just the city.
Right.
Some basic training. But the inspector would have to be granted access to the property if it were in the rear. More than likely, unless there's a point of sale or something, they're not going to be back there. If they're on the sidewalk and it is visible as part of an exterior inspection, if they did have some concerns, they would be able to document it and then gather additional information for that. I'm not anticipating that when the exterior inspection is being conducted, they probably looked more at the house as opposed to the landscape. But they're both being reviewed at the same time.
Right.
So I'm just looking at if you're trying to show some basic competency or a way to get it, if they do discover something, that there's that path created for the inspector in order to verify.
Yeah.
Because what they may view as maybe invasive species, it may not be upon further review.
Sure.
So that's my, concern. And it's not the inspectors are gonna start running around backyards looking for the stuff.
Right.
But, yeah.
Right, and more of the sighting, I think, right now is for noxious weeds and high grass, so that's where the emphasis is.
Yeah, I think that's where the inconsistency may come in, depending on the type of point of inspection, what's found, because although sometimes, not to generalize, but sometimes if there are lots of violations on the inside, it could be, it could also mean that the outside may need a little more focus.
Like, what would we do if somebody plants like bamboo in their back? Is that considered an invasive
Mm.
species?
They have to ask Department of Agriculture. Although it makes quite a beautiful sound.
Right.
It does. It's
Quickly,
actually very beautiful.
Thank you. I guess one more question. For the weeds, is this a question that's already asked and has to be answered during the point of sale or the exterior maintenance? Regards to weeds, high grass,
You said it's a question that's asked?
that's on that, they have a checklist, right? They're working from.
Yes,
Is that a question that's on there or they have to,
violation,
the
yes.
violation, they have to acknowledge if there is or is not, but they are,
No, it's not on the disclosure form when you're selling your product. The property owner files it, but I think what they're saying is it's on the inspection checklist. They're looking for it when they're inspecting. the
it's already
property.
on there. So they're already being,
Yes.
already looking
You're
for
speaking
something.
of the sheet that the inspectors are using,
yeah.
yes.
Okay, thank you. All right.
So should it be on the disclosure form so people aren't surprised?
I'm just talking about the state disclosure.
Oh, okay. Mr. King.
Hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Peripheral vision.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, as far as inspectors going around and citing people for noxious weeds in managed natural landscapes, a defined area. I just really don't see that happening very often. Perhaps the exception being Canadian thistle, which pretty much anyone can, if you see an area being overrun by Canadian thistle, it's pretty obviously a noxious weed. But as far as, I quite honestly see most of the time where we're not going to be going out and looking at something unless somebody does say something about a neighbor's yard. And then we'll just have to identify whether it's noxious or not. But I don't see this as something where the building department is going to be, inspectors are going to be going around and checking for this beyond the most egregious events.
Sorry, Ms. Weiss. I'm sorry, do you,
Oh, no.
We're having a side.
Yeah.
aside,
Sidebar.
okay, wow.
Mr. Malaskis.
Yes, please.
Thank you again for recognizing me. Just a couple of highlights. So that, to be clear, the noxious prohibition is already on the books. The intention with this revision was to be more permissive than the current version is. Right, so if we failed to do that, we want to correct that. But there already is a prohibition on noxious weeds. They are not well defined, which means it's much more up to the interpretation of the administration, what is and isn't a noxious weed. So hopefully we make it a little more clearer so people don't accidentally end up on the wrong side of the law. Another thing I wanted to highlight, and this may be not what the committee wants, but the current implementation of the weeds ordinance does put it on the building and housing director to manage this law. The revision, the director as defined in the definition session is the service director. And so I'm not coming down on it one side or the other that I approve of. I just want to make that clear. So if you guys want it to stay with the building and housing, that needs to be modified then, at least on the copy I have, which admittedly is
see.
older. I don't get the new copy.
Let me
Thank you.
see.
That's,
The
actually, that's worse.
director, right, the
Yeah.
director.
That's worse. It shouldn't be under the service director.
And that,
If this is something that is considered part of the building and housing code, it doesn't belong to the service director.
so, yeah, that. I just
Thank
wanted
you
to
for
highlight.
pointing that out.
And then, the last piece that I wanted to go through is again, as many people have already said, like, this doesn't create any new requirement of enforcement. That, like, we're really trying to say, we want people to be more diverse in the things that they're planting on their property within limits, right? So this really focused on, is it bothering a neighbor that we have some teeth to enforce that? And then if you're trying to now plant on the tree lawn, which is city-owned property, we do need to be a little more careful about what you're doing there. And so let's be clear what we do and don't want there. I know there's going to be further discussion on whether we're going to, with pre-approval or site plans and those sorts of things. But the intention again was like, hey, don't bring us a site plan for approval that's going to have this stuff on here that we have to look at.
So to that point, that's a great, this is very helpful to me. I think we touched upon in the past, if there could be some kind of a guidelines, for homeowners to know, some things to guide them if they're, when they're planting, to do so mindfully, with regard to what's not considered invasive or noxious, but, and it could be pictorial, it could be, something to entice people, to encourage them, rather than be punitive, to be proactive, to help guide our residents to plant things that are better for our environment, our local environment. Thank you. So I don't know.
And if I can add something,
Yes,
Mr.
please.
Meliscus, looking at the ordinance here, it talks about the abatement by the building commissioner, and it defines building commissioner as can be building or director of housing and community development. The tree ordinance, I think, is more directed at the service director, right?
Yeah.
For enforcing like dangerous trees.
This is
So
more
admittedly,
plantings on
I have an
public.
old draft.
I'm
of-
trying to speak.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. There's more plantings on public property where he's working with the arbor.
Right, okay.
And that's why the service director made better sense in the tree ordinance versus in this.
Right, and I think we did, I think we did change probably the draft that came out of,
Okay.
this is
Yeah,
to
the
make it
definition that I have
enforced by.
here in the draft that I still have was that the director
Okay.
was
I have the
If you look
director.
at,
service director.
if you look at 4.07 abatement by the city,
0.07, 1 second. Yes,
07,
building commission,
says notice that if the building commissioner determines,
1084.
the building commissioner make it.
No, we're in,
Why did we jump?
1084.
Why did we jump?
I don't know why we're. So
We're
what
all
is your
damn
point?
place there.
It is enforced by the
Building.
building department or the housing department.
Well-
This-
So C just needs to be revised under definition.
No, see, no, the director can stay in there, but because A defines building commissioner means building commissioner, director of housing. So C is fine in there in case we refer to. director.
Are you saying, Ms. Weiser, that the service director really has no place in this at all?
Yeah, this is,
Okay, that's
this is
what you're
about
saying.
enforcement. I don't understand why we're gonna leave the service department,
Director.
The enforcement section doesn't have him in there, but I
Yeah.
don't know if he's in there.
so there's no.
That's right here.
Define is what I'm,
84.03.
we know who you are. We don't have to define you.
Right. Where the director comes involved is when they're talking about this,
Species selection.
correct, that and maintenance of the public lands.
All right.
Right.
Okay, so it's the initial, it's not the enforcement part.
Yeah.
And that's for public lands.
Right,
Oh, yeah.
03, right, and 04 are the directors in
Alright.
charge of the public properties, but the enforcement is by their departments.
03 lets me define the list of species that is designated as native to Ohio, list of vegetation invasive to Ohio, and then the weeds that are considered noxious. Based upon the Ohio Department of Agriculture, it allows me to maintain those lists and adopt those lists. Then section 04 gets more into the maintenance of public property.
Right, and 07's the enforcement.
Yeah, it's okay. It assumes that you have the knowledge to do that. That's all. I'm pointing out, generally, service directors, I would say, don't necessarily have the knowledge to do that. That's all.
Wasn't there mission, a committee that was choosing trees and helping with those things.
No, that was the ordinance. There's the arborist.
There is a tree commission.
Yeah, we have a tree commission now
Is there any?
in the tree ordinance.
Right, is there any relationship to this as well? Can they?
No.
No,
I would say no.
because this says the director may adopt a list of species of trees, shrubs, vegetation. This is in the weeds.
I'm
ordinance.
aware that
A little
that is
bit.
something I noted, that apparently we managed to stick trees back in this, where we have an entire separate section on trees.
So I
And
think,
trees don't need to be in weeds, weeds.
right, so it sounds like 1084.03 should just consist of C.
Well,
Not
how about we
A,
go, how about we get, are we done with two?
Unless you want to talk more about definitions, I thought.
Well, I'm asking, did we finish two? We started talking about, yes, we started talking about invasive. We had a nice long chat on that. We talked about a couple other things. I just asked, did we finish talking about O2?
Let
That's
me
all.
ask the committee and the directors.
Is there any other thing that we need to look at in O2?
I think the point was made that some of the definitions, including invasive, noxious, those types of things, perhaps straight species by conversely, we understand that it's as determined by and defined by the Ohio Department of Agriculture.
Okay, so we're done with definite.
Yeah.
So yes, in A, we don't need the trees in there because the trees are already done. A, B, A and B. Shrubs and vegetation, I think we didn't really cover, well, we do cover it in trees. They're sort of duplicative.
Okay, so to answer your question,
mm,
I'll repeat the question. Regarding who defines the, for instance, D, invasive species. It says designated as species invasive to Ohio by the Ohio Department of Agriculture
Yeah.
or the director. I'm not sure it should say or the director. If we're saying it's determined by,
Oh, it's-
it could be through the director,
oh,
you
you're
know.
back to O2.
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Please don't confuse me today. That's in C, D.
D
Ah,
and in I.
or the director. There we go.
And the same thing in I. I think it shouldn't be or the director. We've agreed and it makes I think the committee, per Mr.
Yeah,
Meliscus has pointed
okay.
out that it
So
is through.
basically, so we're gonna strike or the director in D
And I,
and I. That puts the creation of that list and H.
and then
H also.
correct.
Or the director and I. Okay,
I think wherever it says.
or
where
the
a
director in
determination,
definitions.
where the director is not, that's not the intention. The intention is for the state of Ohio's agriculture. Okay,
Yep,
but then it
understood.
leads into 1084.03. Then the director may adopt C. Okay, a list of species of weeds. As designated by the directors and noxious weeds. It's really designated, well, I don't know how you say that. It's designated based on the Ohio Department of Agriculture. I mean,
That can be almost any weed.
as opposed to A and B, which is the other ordinance. That's already in, you know.
Did
it's
we
not
do shrubs and
in the other one,
vegetation in there too?
the other
Okay,
ordinance,
so
yes.
that all goes, so A and B, so C becomes A, or just
Just
may
C,
adopt,
just that.
period. We don't need an A, B, C.
Is there any questions or discussion about that or thoughts? It just mixed the two ordinances. They don't need more to do. Mr. Bryan?
Yeah, I'm looking, so you're saying just remove the entire .03 section?
No. A and B. remove A and B because it talks about trees, shrubs, that's a different ordinance. But C can just become 1084.03, the species, weeds. It's designed by the director. So it's really, it dovetails on the definition where the Ohio Department of Agriculture and Ohio Division of Natural Areas and Preserves, they determine what it is and the director then brings it to our city, you know.
And since I may produce a list.
Yeah.
That I
Yeah, so
would manage.
instead of
Makes sense.
adopt, should we say maintain?
Says, yeah, may maintain a list of species of weeds, yeah. Designated by the director as noxious weeds.
Okay, is that,
When
yes,
instead
Mr. King.
Director, we want to say
Wait a minute.
Ohio
Second.
Department of Agriculture.
Yeah, I just want to say, if you just, I know we want to, you're trying to not go jump ahead, but if you do go down to 1084.04, there, it talks about at least 60% of trees planted on public tree lawns must be consistent. So this does talk, there's much more talk about trees in this, the native aspect of trees.
On the public property.
There are native trees in 1072. We had a discussion about
Okay.
percentages of native trees when we talked about 1072, because of the issue, initially there was a percentage and the arborist pointed out that adjusting for tree lawn size and other factors, trying to hit that percentage with native trees may not be beneficial in terms of the entire city, because we deal with sidewalks and streets off of tree lawns with roots.
I think he may have been talking about this ordinance. We were talking about both of them, but yeah, I don't,
I'm sorry?
I think he may have been talking about,
No, he was
He
talking about the
was.
tree ordinance. We took some stuff out already, Brian.
okay.
Okay, so 1084.03.
I look at the original version, and I don't even see the word native in it, so.
Okay, first is 1084.03. Is there any more discussion about that?
You're removing A and B?
Yes. And we're just modifying C. Well, actually, the beginning, it says the director may adopt, instead the director
Or-
will maintain.
Wait a minute.
Mhm.
We could do this. Leave A and B in and just do a list of vegetation, a list of vegetation, and remove tree shrubs.
Oh. Uh-huh.
That way we're covering native vegetation, invasive invasive vegetation, and then weeds. What is the weed?
Yeah.
Is that okay with you? Mr. King?
I think that's the point, actually. It got a little too wordy,
Yeah,
but vegetation is much wider.
and
Guessing
this
a
is
wider
sort of
net.
weedy, well, it is weeds, but it is more vegetation centered than trees and shrubs, which are trees and shrubs in 1072.
Mr. Brian?
I've got it, yep.
So it's
There
A,
we
B, and
go.
C. Instead of the director may adopt, maintain.
So you're
And-
doing the same thing then in 04?
So we're going to go to 04 in a second. We're okay with 03?
I'm good with all three that way.
Anybody else? Okay. 04, native trees, shrubs, vegetation. That'll be just native vegetation. Anybody have a,
Yes.
guess what?
Remove the percentage required.
Oh, okay, so now,
I think what we came down on trees was we are encouraging native trees as much as possible. And I think we all agreed to it, including the arborist. And to turn around now and say 60%, we may not be able to achieve that. And actually, the trees got dealt with in 1072 on public property. But we don't need the trees. We need vegetation because we really didn't cover that. And that's what I'm assuming you want, the goal was to increase native vegetation on public lands. And except for the following uses, community gardens, lawns and athletic fields. Gee, what a pity. Holiday, seasonal, annual decorative plantings, green roofs, and other uses of public property requiring non-native vegetation
Vegetation.
as determined by the director.
Right, I don't understand what we're doing in the subsection A, that first.
We're just
paragraph.
taking out the trees
Okay,
and
And
doing
shrubs.
native vegetation.
More general.
Because the trees are in 1072.
And-
It's just duplicative, that's all.
Shrubs.
And just to clarify, you say there is something in the
Let me look.
1072 that talks about native trees?
Yeah, we do. I remember
know
that,
where?
because we didn't
I'm
want
looking.
native trees taken out of 1072.
Okay.
Oh, I'm into, that's 64. Where's my 1072? Where's my 65?
I'm looking at the original version of 1072, or well, sorry, the original version of 2024-65, and the word native does not appear.
Good thing we didn't totally nail down 1072. We can move native trees back there.
Hmm.
I'm not trying to be funny. I mean, if we're gonna talk about trees, shrubs and hedges in 1072, we should leave all dealing with with trees, shrubs and what do you call them? I think
Hedges.
that we do have native in there somewhere because I know
looking.
we didn't want to get rid of it. But we also followed what the arborist was concerned with.
Looking.
Mr. Rooney has a,
Yes, please.
So for 108404A,
And,
yes,
would you want to remove at least 60% of the? Or those phrases appear twice in the first paragraph, and so it merely reads, trees planted on public tree lawns must consist of native trees. And all new and replacement landscapes installed by the city on public property must consist of native trees, shrubs, ...
I think that's the point. Isn't
Yeah.
that the point? New stuff?
Right,
is-
because in 1074, the ordinance, I'm sorry, 1072, the ordinance, there is a reference to the tree canopy.
in
Mhm.
.04, it says the director in consultation with the certified arborist must adopt criteria for the tree species selection for planting on public property and planting specifications. That just deals with public property and it doesn't say native trees, but it has the arborist give the list of trees, which I think he wanted.
oh,
There's
I know why.
protected trees.
Remember we pulled out specifications because we said we have a separate book that got into the nitty gritty, the diameters and the area around, the tree trunk.
Yes.
And I think the native is in that. Because remember, we pulled all the little demanding items about that and put it in that separate book that's going to come to us.
And the
That was
director.
built into the original ordinance. That's where, that's why you're not seeing it in this. It's in that. Because we said that had to be flexible. The percentages are going to have to be flexible. It's going to determine for trees, it's going to be determined by the ability of the size of the land to hold it. And I think in there, we said we wanted native as much as possible.
Yeah, I believe that was all, excuse me, was going to be underneath the specifications for the tree planting.
But we did not go to a percentage of them. We
Correct.
just said we encourage the higher use of native trees where possible. Because that was the concern.
That works.
Yeah, there we go. I knew we did something that made it sensible and I had to think about it. Sorry, I couldn't get that.
We have to reference that accompanying document in here.
No, it's in trees.
Okay, so we don't need it in here.
Yeah, that was, this actually is not as detailed as the tree ordinance was when it came to us. It didn't have all those little nitty gritty things. This has just the director picking the species that fit those categories. And it's sort of looser, and because it's looser, and because it says the director picks it, he maintains the list, which is in essence what we did with all that stuff we pulled out of trees and put into the handbook, I guess you could call it, that the director will maintain. Aren't you?
Mr. Pennington, your recollection?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's something along those lines. And yeah, when you look at the first sentence where it talks about at least the 60%,
Yes,
what we have to be careful of is that we don't mandate all public tree lawns must consist of native vegetation, and
Right.
only native vegetation. So we need to make sure that we've clarified that if we take out the 60%, that we're not mandating that all.
must consist, right? So it needs a little bit modified language. Is it new? Oh, but it's planted, newly planted? Is that what we're talking about? Yeah, 100%. I mean, we'd want all those to be native that we
So,
plant.
yeah, right
that we
now, we're
actually
working
plant.
with language saying,
That we not do that.
so
Are you?
right now it would read new and replacement landscapes installed by the city on public property must consist of native vegetation except for the following uses. Now, I guess the question is, do we read that as saying that's gotta be everything except for the exceptions, or?
Can we say in that section, we encourage the highest proportion of native plants to be selected?
Or say something like a portion of, rather than saying
Portion of,
it
which should be-
must consist of a portion of native trees, shrubs, vegetation, except for the following areas.
Point.
Well, yeah, so if
What's
we
the
take
point?
out the at least 60%, it's basically saying only.
A portion of, right, I
Of
think what Alan
newly
said, a portion of
planted.
new. and
Newly, yes,
replacement.
correct.
Yeah, why not? Why would we want to plant invasive species or non-native?
that's invasive and non-native are different.
Okay,
You can have a non-native species that is not invasive that you might want to plant because it may actually look good in the area we're planting it, and there's a reason to put it in. If we turn around and say we want everything native, we have eliminated a huge bunch of plants that would give difference and make that whole thing a little better.
so I'd like to know what the intention was from the committee. Because I don't want to get mixed signals
Yeah,
here.
so I think this is one instance where we were just wrong. We wanted to do native, and what was brought up by the arborist was a very good point. In particular
So,
about climate change, right?
Yeah.
So things that are native
Exactly.
and appropriate now may not be in 30 years. And so we want to be a little more forward thinking.
Flexible.
So I think that criticism is well taken and we should take it out.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, now I remember.
Okay,
Okay. Okay, so it's not absolute,
Say a portion of, and that way
Right.
we have the
it's
flexibility.
based on the expertise of the Ohio Department of Agriculture, the arborist, et cetera. No,
well,
those,
the service
those-
director
yeah,
is
so-
dealing with this stuff.
Okay.
So this is public property and that's under him.
great. Okay, any more discussion on 1084.04? Okay, moving along, 1084.05,
Wait a minute,
Oh.
2084.
native trees, native
um,
vegetation.
Okay, and B.
B.
I had a note about straight species.
Okay,
and then looked at it, and these are original native plants. And it's in satisfying the requirements of A, the city must prioritize installing straight species of native trees. Well, get the native trees out, shrubs and vegetation. Okay, to the extent practical and subject to commercial availability. Okay, not a problem. I see that. Okay,
so it's to adapt to climate change.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Okay. 1084.05, manage natural landscapes. Okay, the owner or occupant. Plans to manage landscape. Okay, we really need that handbook here. What's the discussion? Anybody have questions or observations? Mr. King.
I do.
I was just gonna say, when we had discussed this in the past, I'd raised some concerns about the 30-inch height for the plantings that would really eliminate quite a very large number of desirable native plants to go into the managed natural landscapes like milkweed, coneflower. It would have a very limiting effect on what you could plant in them.
Okay, Ms. Weiser? Thank you.
What is the fascination with putting these on public tree lawns versus your own lawn?
Yeah.
I mean, you have a lawn. You could put this very easily there. I'm curious.
Right.
It's a
So
curious
in
question.
the whereas, one of the whereas statements for this, back up here. Let's see. All right. Yeah, whereas the city welcomes Ecological Heights Native Pollinator Path Program to our community. So that's part of the Native Pollinator Pathway Program, is to encourage it is in front yards, but also to encourage in tree lawns so that it is very visible from the street, to encourage neighbors to plant their own.
I would think if it's done right, that probably works. I've seen some that don't quite meet that category and probably work against the very objective you're trying to achieve. And if you're saying the issue with 30-inch is on the tree lawn, moving it onto a front
It
lawn.
isn't just the tree lawn either. It says within 10 feet of a right of way, which I'm assuming that would be the sidewalk as well.
If you add in.
So that would eliminate most of a good chunk of a front yard.
Yeah, 12 feet. of
12
public
feet,
right-of-way.
yeah.
And then there's a minimum,
There are a number of yards that have already been planted like that in the city.
Yeah, but we're saying foliage can be 30 inches high oh, pardon me, 10 feet in high, between 30 inches and 10 feet
Can't
in
be.
height.
can't be, right?
Can't be. It's talking about something growing from the ground versus leaves coming down from a tree being, that's the 10 foot that it's referring to. The 30 inches is only 2.5 feet. Whereas many of these species will grow to 4 or 5.
Yeah, I know the 10
Feet.
feet is to allow trucks to go under.
Well,
30 inches just seems really tall.
It's in fact low.
2.5 feet.
think back to the hedges.
Yeah.
Yeah,
For
right.
the
Yeah,
obstructed view, right?
It's not as obstructive as a hedge.
Right,
though.
exactly.
Grassy plant.
It's like the first question I asked 2 hours ago.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, that's, brings me to my point. It's now 10 after 8 or 9 after 8, and maybe this is a good place to stop. I thought we could maybe get through it, but this is good dialogue and we're getting to some, getting down to the nitty gritty in the weeds, so to speak. So.
We are in the weeds.
So I think I want to thank everyone for your comments up and down the table, all around, and just very much appreciate the input as we work our way through this, and we will get through it. We got through the trees, so I think the next meeting should do it for the weeds. Do I need a motion to adjourn?
Yeah.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, the adjourn. Thank you.
We get a lot done today.
How about that?
We did.